The House is to continue debate on the motion that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Banking Services Act can now be read a second time. Also on the agenda, 3 sectoral presentations by members Robert Montague, Minister of National Security, Shahine Robinson, Minister of Labour and Social Security, and Horace Dalley, Opposition Spokesperson on Health. If you are planning to attend a session at Gordon House, here are a few rules you need to keep in mind. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card from the office of the clerk. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed, unless so authorized by the presiding person. And there should be no smoking inside the parliamentary building. The use of the following items are not allowed within the precincts of the House: cellular phones, laptop computers, computer tablets, drink, food, or weapons. And that's what's on the agenda. Do remember that items on the agenda are subject to change. Pleasant viewing.
This Honourable House now resume its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mr. Whittle, Mr. Smith, Mr. Holness, Mr. Shaw, Dr. Chang, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Montague, Ms. Grange, Mr. Henry, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Darrell Vaz, Mrs. Robinson, Mr. Hutchinson, Dr. Wheatley, Dr. Tufton, Mrs. Malahoo Ford, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Spencer, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Green, Mr. Arscott, Mr. Azan, Dr. Bloomfield, Mr. Brown, Mr. Buchanan, Mr. Bunting, Dr. Campbell, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Clark, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Ms. Daly, Mr. Dalley, Mrs. Dalrymple Philibert, Dr. Davies, Mr. Fagan, Dr. Ferguson, Dr. Green, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Hales, Mrs. Holness, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Kellier, Mr. Main, Dr. McNeil, Ms. Nita, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Michael Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Pickersgill, Mr. Redmond, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mrs. Simpson Miller, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Terry Long, Reverend Thwaites, Mr. Dwayne Baz, Mr. Wright, Reverend Thwaites,
Statement by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: Ministry of Labour and Social Security, Annual Performance Report 2016-2017, National Labour Market Survey 2017.
Members, I wish to recognize a number of visitors, ambassadors, and relatives and friends and colleagues, members of departments connected to ministry, and students from the Taki High School. I wish you to welcome them. bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions.
Mr. Speaker, after 21 days, I wish to ask the Minister of Science, Energy and Technology the following questions, and the Minister of Transport and Mining the following 2 sets of questions.
Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. Public business.
Mr. Speaker, on the public business, we'll continue the sectoral debate. Today we'll have presentation from the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Labour and Social Security, and the Member of Parliament for Western Westmoreland, who is a spokesman on tourism, after which we'll be dealing with an act to amend the Public Debt Management Act.
Minister Montague.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First, I wish to give thanks to God for His grace and love. It is these who have kept me on this journey. Sir, I also wish to thank you for your able management of this Honourable House. I want to thank my Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, because it was he who has invested the faith and the courage to appoint me to this trying portfolio. To my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, I thank you for your advice, encouragement, and support. It shows that crime and violence is not partisan and requires a joined-up effort. To my State Minister, Senator Purnell Charles Jr., a better deputy I could not deserve. To Ms. Diane McIntosh, Permanent Secretary. To Ms. Diane McIntosh, Permanent Secretary. The heads of agencies, directors.
Minister, hold a minute for me, and we will have to give you back your time.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
May I just advise the enthusiastic members in the gallery that in this Parliament, you should have been advised from downstairs that you are here to observe. You cannot participate. And when we finish, you will do your participation outside. So please sit quietly and watch and learn. Minister Montague, you may teach.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To Ms. Diane McIntosh, Permanent Secretary, the heads of agencies, directors, the staff of the National Security family, I thank and appreciate the work you are doing in keeping Jamaica safe. To the many volunteers, chairmen of boards, board members, and the support staff, a grateful minister expresses his appreciation. To my personal staff, both in Kingston and St. Mary, thank you for putting up with me, but I know you share the passion and the mission. A special thanks to Barbara, my helper of many years. To Keisha Pennant, a.k.a. Mummy. Keisha, thank you. To Ralston McKinley, Mas Jimmy, my driver, you have been with me through thick and thin, and I want to express my appreciation. To my security team led by Inspector Samuel Heron, including those in Kingston and St. Mary, I thank you. I want to acknowledge my 5 councillors, 5 councillors. and thank them for their dedication and their hard work. To the constituency of Western St. Mary, may I say the greatest constituency in the country, thanks for granting me the privilege of being your voice in this house, your servant, to improve your community. I am humbled and honored. To my constituency workers, I am forever grateful to you. It was you who delivered the 11,710 votes to make me the candidate to receive the most votes in the last election. Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize the former leader of the opposition, Mrs. Portia Simpson Miller, a personal friend of mine, and to thank her for her years of service to this country. I also want to acknowledge the new leader of the opposition, Dr. Peter Phillips, and wish him well in his new endeavors. Mr. Speaker, my one regret is that my mother and father did not live to see this moment. I wish to recognize also the 16 students and 3 teachers from the Taki High School in Gale in St. Mary. Mr. Speaker, the member from Central Manchester made some rather unfortunate comments last week. I intend to deal with them later on in this presentation. I also note the brave action of the station guard at the Hayes Police Station in Clarendon. He repelled a brazen attack by gunmen over the weekend. In addition, we also note 2 recent events where private licensed firearm holders were using their weapons contrary to good practice during the carnival season. There has been an increasing and worrying trend of private gun owners brandishing their weapons in public spaces, especially at entertainment events. Let me be very clear. If you pull your weapon or discharge it in a public space illegally, it will not only be removed and the license revoked, but you can take this commitment to the bank. It will not be returned. So pull it at your own peril and pray to God that you don't shoot or assault any innocent persons. No matter who you are related to, where you work, it will be revoked. Let me also warn those motorists and bikes with blue lights on their motor vehicles. We are asking you to remove them and to remove them now. Only the police are permitted to have blue lights on their vehicles. I want to urge all bikers to get and to use your helmets, because we'll be cracking down soon on the motorbike industry. We urge all illegal taxi operators to legitimize their operations, whether the operation is owned by a police, soldier, politician, or even them auntie. Legitimize yourselves, as we are about to launch a major drive against illegal taxi operators. This minister supports taxi operators as long as you are legitimate. So I ask, Mr. Speaker, all the members of this House to have a conversation with all the persons mentioned above, so that when the crackdown comes, they can all be informed. If we are to achieve our national goals, Mr. Speaker, as set forth in the National Development Strategy, Vision 2030, then we must create a safer and secure Jamaica. To that, we must craft an all-of-government approach to issues. This government has done so and is committed to putting the resources and the political will behind that approach. In order to secure Jamaica, there are 10 basic elements that we must treat with. 1, public order. As a nation, we must take back control of our public spaces. Illegal vending, squatting, the do-as-I-please mentality must be curbed, so that public spaces can be enjoyed by all. Hence, we have launched Operation Clean Sweep, which is bringing back some semblance of orders in many town centers today. 2, corruption. This, simply put, is the bypassing of rules and procedures for selfish gain. If we are to build a safe and prosperous Jamaica, all Jamaicans must be committed to tackling corruption, the greatest threat to national development. Hence, we are strengthening our anti-corruption laws, merging agencies to concentrate resources, and enforcing adherence to already established laws. And 3, territorial integrity. This requires the protection of our borders for the use and enjoyment of Jamaicans and whom we invite. We have 497 miles of coastline, a marine space 25 times the size of Jamaica, 14 legal points of entry, and 145 illegal ports. Currently, we are challenged to protect it all, but we are up to the task because we are losing some $10 million per year in fishing resources, and guns, drugs, and other contraband are entering the country illegally. We have invested billions of dollars, Mr. Speaker, billions, not millions, when others would not, in purchasing 2 ships and a surveillance plane. We have seen dividends already, where recently 3 ships were seen fishing illegally in our waters. 2 were boarded, and we have chased many go-fast boats out of our space. We have introduced facial recognition software into the passport application process, which has so far identified 473 multiple passport holders, 73 of which are before the courts. We have increased the number of immigration officers. We will introduce online passport application, e-passports, and e-gate for landing in the near future. We have increased cooperation with our partners and upped the use of international watch lists. We have, for the period April 1, 2016 to March 31, 2017, refused entry to 507 persons and deported 138 persons from Jamaica. 4, terrorism. This is the use of a sudden catastrophic event to create fear and panic in the population. Mr. Speaker, we cannot wait on an attack in Jamaica. We must prepare ourselves. We therefore will be amending our anti-terrorism laws, engaging a consultant to write our terrorist response manual. We have already started to harden our defenses, rearrange soft targets, and have invested heavily into our intelligence network. We increased information sharing with our partners and have begun to actively work on more bilateral agreements. We are taking terrorism seriously and have started training of some of our officers at the Caribbean Maritime University. We assure this House that much work is taking place, but we cannot go into all the details. 5, protection of critical infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, our bridges, hospitals, water supplies are unprotected. Access is easy and by anyone. Yet the impact of the actions of one person can be devastating for the nation. We see the amount of discomfort and inconvenience the phased reduction of service at Cornwall Regional is creating. We saw the disruption to the national economy when the Harbour View and the Yallas Bridge washed away. What is the backup plan? Where is the alternative route? The NWA and the NWC are currently doing these assessments and are working on these plans. A Government of Jamaica protective security policy will soon be passed to establish a framework for the protection of government operations, its employees, assets, information, integrity, and reputation from real or potential threats present both internally and externally. 6, continuation of government. Government is needed to provide overall direction and guidance to our affairs. But if there's a catastrophic event, is there a plan for the continuation of government, Mr. Speaker? What if on the opening of Parliament, when all critical heads gather, something should happen? On that one day, in one place, we find the Governor General, the Prime Minister, the Leader of Opposition, the Commissioner of Police, Chief of Defence Staff, the Chief Justice, Director of Public Prosecutions, the Permanent Secretaries, Heads of Agencies, the President of the Court of Appeal, Senators and MPs. Mr. Speaker, how could we as a nation survive if we lost all of those persons all at once? What are the plans? Is there a designated survivor? Is there a backup command post for the Commissioner of Police or the Chief of Defence Staff away from their headquarters? Can the Prime Minister of Jamaica run government from elsewhere if Kingston is not safe or accessible? These are critical questions we wish to assure the public and you, Mr. Speaker, are being addressed. 7, Cyber crimes. The use of cyberspace to criminally enrich oneself or damage another's reputation is a growing trend. Hacking, lottery scamming, and the illegal interception of communications are but some of the issues we must confront. When criminals take your identity, get control of your power supply or the telecoms network, the damage cannot be calculated. Hence, we as a caring government are hardening our resistance and improving our defense. We have conducted a cyber defense audit on critical networks and are in the process of treating with the weaknesses highlighted. 8, education. Mr. Speaker, we see education as a tool for crime fighting. A literate person has the ability to resolve conflicts peacefully. An educated person is trainable and can become economically viable. Not only are we strengthening our Safe School program, but we are far advanced in completing a discussion with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information to introduce a unit in all HEART modules to teach etiquette, punctuality, conflict resolution, career planning, volunteerism, and civics. We believe that attitude comes from within, but discipline from outside. If our young people want to benefit from a second chance, they must accept this enhanced program that will be supervised by the JDF and the JCF. 9, growth, protection of our economy. Growth in our economy, Mr. Speaker, is fragile. How will a terrorist attack affect it? How do we recover? Can we recover? How do we protect the integrity of our financial systems from money laundering, tax evasion, and other illicit activities? We are moving to enhance the work and scope of the Revenue Protection Division and the Financial Investigative Division. We are moving to bring them all and other agencies under the Ministry of National Security. We are completing soon a new act to govern the Jamaica Constabulary Force. The Prime Minister has already tabled the MOCA Act. Mr. Speaker, the 10th point is crime and violence. Every Jamaican must not only be safe, but must feel secure in carrying out their daily activities and to achieve their life's goal. The Ministry of National Security has direct responsibility for crime and violence in Jamaica. We have moved to look at it in a holistic way, fully understanding that better policing and more equipment alone cannot solve the problem. Nor can the problem be solved overnight, because there's no quick fix, no magic wand, no switch, as the seeds of the situation we face today was planted 15, 20 years ago. We acknowledge and ask all Jamaicans to note that solving crime is not for one person. It's not an instant fix or an overnight thing, although some people hopelessly believe that is so. We have laid out a 5-pillar national crime strategy on which our work will rest. And we intend, Mr. Speaker, to table this document today as a ministry paper and to distribute soft copies to the members. The 5-pillar national crime strategy. And the 5 pillars, Mr. Speaker, first, no, the one from no, is swift and sure justice. There can be no prosperity without justice. Our justice system is under pressure and we will fix it. Case backlog, poor working conditions, lack of witnesses, all contribute to the slowing the delivery of justice. We wish to thank Minister Delroy Chuck and his team for working hard and to using innovative measures to correct the shortcomings of the past. Every Jamaican must be confident that the system will deliver and on a timely basis. So retired judges, additional court staff are being recruited, courthouses are being repaired, the plea bargaining enhanced, police are better preparing case files, and in addition, some 20 lawyers will be employed. Each police division will be assigned one lawyer to help with the preparation of case files and to assist police officers if they are required at Indicom. We are not there yet, Mr. Speaker, but we are well on the way because we have the will and the Jamaicans' interest at heart. And 2, reducing reoffending. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend the men and women of the Department of Correctional Services for their stellar contribution to nation building. With limited resources, poor working conditions, but a faith and a belief in Jamaica and her future they have delivered. Mr. Speaker, when last have you heard of an inmate escaping from a penal institution in Jamaica? The good Senator Pernell Charles Jr., who has responsibility, is amazed at the level of commitment from the DCS personnel. The Correctional Services and its officers have conducted searches to reveal guns, drugs, knives, and phones. They have disrupted plans of inmates to create mayhem in the society. It is the hard work and the passing of intelligence to the authorities by the Department of Correctional Services staff that has helped to improve the system. It is the work of the correctional officers that have stopped the illegal recording of songs, and it is these officers who have helped to stem the runaway levels of murders in St. Catherine. We commend them, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we have polygraphed the new recruits. Of the 115 recruits, 2 dropped out. 80 or 71% was successful in passing the polygraph test, 59 males and 21 females. It is these officers who will be trained to join the others who are there already, Mr. Speaker. It is they who have supervised the various rehabilitation programs being run by various NGOs and partner agencies. It is the officers who supervise the agricultural program that produces 2 meals once per week. It is the officers who have repaired and reinstalled the cell phone jammers. A new day has dawned, and we must also commend our probation officers for their role in being comforter, friend, advisor to many wards of the state and parolees. They provide love and guidance, and many times are the only glimpse of hope and kind-heartedness to the dejected of society. I salute the probation officers of this country. We have completed the waiting area at the Richmond and Tambourine Farm prison facilities, making it more humane for families when they visit their loved ones. We wish to thank Food for the Poor for the classrooms at Tambourine Farm, and to thank the College of Agriculture, Science and Education for the hydroponics unit for the St. Catherine District Prison, which has produced 1 crop of vegetables already. We're almost done with the testing of electronic bracelets. So far it has gone very well, and some 20 parolees or early release persons are using them. The new section of Tambourine Farm will be in service very soon. We will gazette the order that Tambourine Farm and South Camp Road facilities will become receiving centers for the system. This will enhance the service delivery and reduce overcrowding at Tower Street and St. Catherine. We have more spaces in the system than inmates, but most are at St. Catherine or Tower Street. We will also do much needed repairs and rehabilitation at Tower Street and Spanish Town, and we'll also be expanding the farming and skills training. We believe that the inmates must contribute to their room and board. Taxpayers deserve a break, Mr. Speaker. Our aim is to equip our inmates with skills so that they do not return. We are also doing chess, sports, literacy as a means of conflict resolution, more trade training, and more formal high school equivalency programs. We wish to thank the churches, the NGOs and individuals, and the international partners for their work in our correctional facilities. We are on the road to using the correctional service to fight crime, Mr. Speaker. We have put in metal detectors, upgraded the CCTV network, and restarted the search and intelligence unit. Mr. Speaker, crime prevention through social development. We acknowledge that it is as a result of social disorder that crime sometimes thrives. Too many of our schools produce poor educational outcomes. Too many broken homes. There has been a breakdown of family life. The family as a fundamental unit of society is under pressure. The spiritual groundings that we know are disappearing. Collectively as a society, we must pause, take stock, and reset our values and attitudes for a better tomorrow. This malfunction of society is the root cause of crime. No matter how much we lock away, no matter how many gangs we disrupt, more recruits and criminals are coming up. And that is why this government is committed to correcting the problems at the root and not treating with the symptoms. We are therefore introducing the National Identification System, where every Jamaican will have an identification card with vital information. We are insisting that your father's name be put on your birth certificate, giving more time in schools via the Career Advancement Program, and channeling unattached youth, especially boys, into the LEGS program. Mr. Speaker, the unattached youth will be recruited by some force, whether it's good or evil. We want it to be good. Hence, we are taking them into the national service, introducing a new unit into Heart, and expanding the Jamaica Combined Cadet Force. We are disrupting and displacing gangs, and you can be assured that we are using social intervention to treat with the root causes of crime, but not with the symptoms. We have signed an MOU with the churches that sets out the protocol by which the clergy will deal with illegal weapons, contraband, wanted persons. We have also reactivated 12 of the 14 parish consultative committees. Some 489 neighborhood watches are now up and running. We intend to launch more and to train their members. The fourth pillar is situational prevention, Mr. Speaker. We have 40% of our population in informal settlements with poor roads, poor light and water supplies. We need better coordination of our built and natural environment. 45% of our lands have no title, or the title is not in the name of the owner. Corruption is crippling the society and has almost become the norm. We have to treat with our current situation, and this government, led by Andrew Holness, is taking the steps so to do. We are increasing spending on the land program. We are amending the land titling laws to make titling faster. We are updating the work of various planning departments and enhancing their systems. We are improving the services offered to our citizens. We want illegal capture of land to be a thing of the past. We want to see more planned communities with a police post and CCTV systems, regular garbage collection, proper street lighting, and better water supplies and roads. None can deny that many times it is your situation that may lead you into a life of crime. We are therefore determined as a government to improve people's situations because we are a government that cares. We will reduce crime if we regularize our circumstances, and that is why the HOPE program recently launched is critical to our fight against crime. We will have a new law soon to have special zones where we can begin to normalize our communities. You will see the security forces clearing specific communities of gangs, holding these communities and building out the infrastructure, and also allowing space for the social agencies to do their work within these communities. I saw some of these communities recently in Brazil. The transformation after 4 years is something to see. I saw a hotel in the middle of a village. Small businesses were flourishing. People were saying that after the initial suspicion, they saw opportunities and exploited them. They saw many services they never had, they now have. Interestingly, they spoke of how they paid their utility bills, send their children to school regularly. They spoke of their sporting achievements and how they feel a part of society finally. It is not beyond us in Jamaica to remove the barriers, equalize the opportunities, and build a better and more prosperous Jamaica. Let us move quickly to pass the Special Zones Act, and let us recapture the Jamaican dream. The fifth pillar, Mr. Speaker, is effective policing. We believe that effective policing is the way to go. We must respect the human rights of others, utilize technology, information gathering, and age-old police techniques. It is this combination that will ultimately break the back of crime. Mr. Speaker, this document, the 5-pillar National Crime Strategy, we commend it to you and to everyone. It is our safer and more prosperous Jamaica. It is not a static document. It is our foundation, but it can change as circumstances demand. It is a fundamental body of work that the government has now placed in the public domain. We welcome other thoughts, comments, ideas, and suggestions. Mr. Speaker, let me place on record the thanks and appreciation for the service of our men and women of the security forces of Jamaica. These men and women serve their nation and deserve every commendation. To the hard-working district constables, DCs, we thank them for their years of service. We are pleased to inform you, Mr. Speaker, that this government, under this minister, has finally gotten approval for district constable to become pensionable. No longer must they work to the age of 60 before they can get an honorarium. They are now pensionable, sir. 2,300 DCs have been pensionable effective April 1, 2016. Mr. Speaker, after the sudden departure of Dr. Carl Williams as Commissioner of Police, DCP Novelette Grant was asked to act as Commissioner. She did so for a little over 90 days. She served her nation well at that level, and she did it with grace and dignity. On behalf of all of us here, we wish to thank her for her service. The position of Commissioner of Police was passed to a little country boy who went to King Western All Age, a past student of Oberlin High, but by his hard work, integrity, and humility, he has risen to become Jamaica's 29th Commissioner of Police. George Fitzroy Quayle has over 40 years of service and experience, and we are confident that with God's guidance, he will lead the JCF on the transformational road, and we want to offer him our congratulations. Mr. Speaker, if I was being political, I could safely say that the George Quayle story of a little country boy rising up from rural Jamaica to become the Commissioner of Police is a true prosperity story. And indeed, to get gender balance, we can talk a little country girl from Woodhall in St. Catherine rising to be the Prime Minister of Jamaica. Madam, you could be the poster child for prosperity. Mr. Speaker, after putting on a paramilitary uniform for the first time in 1975 at Wilmer's Boys School, he graduated top student at Sandhurst. He had the honor of having lunch with Her Majesty. He served the Air Wing, the Engineering and Support and Services Battalion, earned a PhD on his own time, lectures and served on many boards. The Defense Board confirmed Major General Rocky Meade as Chief of Defense Staff. We congratulate you, sir, and equally thank Major General Anthony Anderson for his service to this nation as Chief of Defense Staff. And we note Major Anderson's sterling work as Jamaica's first national security advisor as he continues to give service. Mr. Speaker, we wish to congratulate Ms. Diane McIntosh, who returned to the ministry as Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Finance. Madam, your transformational work as PS is being unfolded as the ministry has embarked on a journey to transform itself to better serve the nation. I'd also wish to thank Major General Stuart Saunders, the former Permanent Secretary, especially for his work with the University of the West Indies with regards to the Master's Program in National Security. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank Dr. Kenroy Wedderburn for his service to the FLA. He resigned to pursue other paths, and after a long search, the board is recommending that Mr. Shahine Dalley, attorney at law, be the new CEO, and I wish to congratulate Mr. Dalley on his appointment. Equally, Mr. Speaker, Ms. Jennifer MacDonald, a fine public servant, came to the end of her contract with PICA, and the Public Service Commission, after a long and exhaustive search and vetting process, has informed that Mr. Andrew Winter will be the new CEO at PICA. Mr. Speaker, the ministry has a very good team of new and experienced players, but they are all proven performers. Sir, it is my belief that the time has come for us as a nation to begin a conversation of ring-fencing critical positions that are vital to the success of any administration, and that we as a nation must find a mechanism to allow any new administration to be able to appoint persons that they are confident will execute their programs that they had presented to the people of Jamaica during election. Mr. Speaker, we are a young and maturing democracy. We must find ways to allow any administration to implement their plans that they presented to the people during a campaign. You may not agree with me, but at least let us begin the dialogue. Mr. Speaker, you present programs to people, you must have a means to execute and implement. Mr. Speaker, let me outline the investment in national security architecture. We have increased recruitment in both the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the Jamaica Defence Force. We have purchased 2 ships and a plane, and we intend to purchase another plane. We will continue work on the barracks at Upper Camp. We will begin work in Montague Bay to start to build out a new base in the second city and at Braham Wharf in Savlamar, because we have now completed the land acquisition phase. We will commence work on the jetty in Port Royal. However, the jetty for the public, customs and the police is 80% complete, and we wish to thank the Jamaica Customs for their underwriting the cost. Equally, their contribution in building out 3 new marine police bases in Arokobesa, Rocky Point and Alligator Pond, and providing vehicles for each post. We will expand training, especially in foreign languages that they call staff colleges. For the police, we will take possession of 120 pickups and 80 pre-owned motor cars in May. We intend to purchase more, sir. The 36 units that have already been in the service are working well and serving the various communities. We intend to purchase a suitable hearse so that we can replace the old highest bus that is used to take our men and women on their final journey after serving this country. We repaired 114 cars. Many were in disrepair from the last administration. More cars and bikes will be procured. We intend to convert more cars to LNG. And Mr. Speaker, having completed the procurement for the conversion kits, 10 cars are to be converted starting within the next 30 days. We intend to repair some 30 police stations this year, as we did 17 in the last financial year. I already mentioned the 20 lawyers. We have repaired the dormitories at the National Police College and are far advanced in having it become a degree-granting institution with a name change to the National Polytechnic on Security. New police stations at Shady Grove, Longville Park, and Port Maria, courtesy of the National Housing Trust, and we want to record our appreciation to the Trust. 20 new mobile stations will soon be completed and deployed. The DNA registry is now up and running. We wish to thank Dr. Judith Mott, the police and the ministry's legal department for the sterling work in having this happen. We are developing a drone policy to treat with the sale and use of drones. We must balance commerce and pleasure with privacy and safety. We now have 4 forensic pathologists and staff and are moving to reduce the backlog for autopsies. We will be constructing 4 autopsy suites, 2 in Montego Bay and 2 in Kingston. Hold on, Mandeville coming soon. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to inform you that the 23,000 security guards in Jamaica are now all certified, and if they desire, they can access individual health insurance, and to inform the House and them that individual health insurance does not attract GCT. Their condition of service is the subject of a joint cabinet submission between the Ministry of National Security and the Ministry of Labour that will soon become a reality. This minister holds the men and women in the security guard industry close to his heart, and I am committed to improving their service and to have them treated with the dignity they deserve. We have had a national conference on citizen safety and security in Montego Bay, where ordinary Jamaicans got to question and to put forward useful suggestions and ideas. We had a meeting with the PNP. They were briefed on national security issues. My office is now trying to organize a suitable date for us to meet and update the new president of that organization. Mr. Speaker, last year we concentrated on our borders to secure them, as well as invested heavily into the Institute of Forensic Science and Legal Medicine. The strategy is working. We are now better able to restrict the flow of illicit items and guns into the country. New technology and advancement are allowing us to prepare better cases and enhance our intelligence gathering. We are using software that was developed by a young Sergeant Miguel Bernard at the Forensic Institute, and it is being used by the Institute to trace guns. It shows that the top 5 most wanted guns in Jamaica have done 51 kills. Each gun is featured in multiple police divisions. The software tells a story of these guns. Mr. Speaker, we want the guns, the users, and the owners of them. This homegrown software is being studied by international partners, and we place on record our commendations to young Miguel Bernard. That is why this year, Mr. Speaker, our aim is guns, gang, and lottery scamming. We have started, because if you are now caught with a gun and provide information to the police, we will not oppose your bail. So far it has worked, as information gathered so far is showing a record increase in gun recovery since the start of this year, some 241 as of April 15 compared to 176 for the same period, an increase of 37%. Mr. Speaker, we encourage the families to encourage their members who are caught with a weapon to engage the police and to give them information. There will also be a focus on the unattached youth, and we are increasing our enrollment in the Jamaica Combined Cadet Force, especially in Western Jamaica. Already the Spot Valley High will be one of our training centers. We have 19 officers in training for a new cadet battalion. We only have 293 cadets in Western Jamaica, and we must significantly increase this number. We have already started discussions with 10 schools in Western Jamaica for new cadet units. The JCCF now has a plane and a private pilots training program. Mr. Speaker, we are going to be targeting gangs, and we are going after them this year. Legislatively, we will be amending the Fingerprint Act, the Firearms Act, the Proceeds of Crime Act. We also want to place pre-laws under offenses under the Proceeds of Crime Act. The Offensive Weapons Act, the Noise Abatement Act, and the MOCA Act is already tabled. And the Police Services Commission and the Police Civilian Oversight Authority, the plans are moving very fast to merge both entities. The police rules will be amended to give more power to the Inspectorate of Police, and the early retirement scheme is back after being amended. It is the intention of this government to pass the new Road Traffic Act. It will modernize the old one and promote greater safety for all our citizens. Mr. Speaker, we are announcing an amnesty on traffic tickets as of the 1st of July 2017 for 60 days. We urge all persons with outstanding tickets to participate, as penalties and interest will be waived. This year, Mr. Speaker, is decent and law-abiding people's year. The good people of Jamaica deserve a break. The police are making progress. The use of the technology is in full use. We want to introduce another mechanism where the public can pass on information. You simply write to the police any information you have, put it in an envelope, put a big X on the front. Use gloves if you don't want a fingerprint on it. Drop it in the post box or at any post office, and under agreement with Jamaica Post, it will reach the police. You can continue downloading the Stay Alert app. We now have over 100,000 downloads on the app. And I also wish to thank Digicel and Flow, and because through an arrangement with them, as of June 1, all new phones sold in Jamaica will have the Stay Alert app preloaded. We commend them. Mr. Speaker, the member from Central Manchester made some unfortunate remarks last week. Very unfortunate. In his quest for headlines, he shouted and pontificated fake news. Since then, everyone who is associated with national security is calling him Mr. Fake News. But I don't support name calling. Mr. Speaker, I have no wish to embarrass or humiliate the young man from Central Manchester. So I'll only lay out the facts. But to be fair, it was not all gloom and doom. He made 2 points, which were worthy. He criticized me on the legislative agenda that we had planned. I concede our performance was not as robust as it should have been. On the matter of turning firearm holders into special district constables, during the consultation of the final draft of the proposal, the technical staff raised a number of questions. For example, whether they would fall under the remit of INDICOM. Further research and work is taking place. Mr. Speaker, these and other matters we thought the young man would have dived into because we are open to suggestions and ideas. Instead, he did not heed Dr. Phillips' advice to the students of UTEC. Keep away from selfish, narrow politics. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, I went on to try to score points. This first comment, and I quote him, "Last week, the American media pointed to many policy reversals and campaign promises. For example, 1, avoiding the use of military force in Syria. 2, labeling China a currency manipulator. 3, on the North Atlantic Treaty Organization being obsolete." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, what right does the member have to use the Parliament to negatively comment on the internal affairs of a friendly country? Mr. Speaker, is it normal to use the Parliament to attack and question in a subtle way? Is it normal? Is it normal
Order,
to
please,
use the Parliament
order, please.
to attack and question in a subtle way the President of the United States or any other leader? It is actually against established diplomatic protocol. It's also against the standing orders of this Parliament. The United States is our biggest partner in national security. Why attack them? Mr. Speaker, why are we picking a quarrel with them? Mr. Speaker, have the member thought of the effect on the many Jamaicans living in the United States as a result of his loose comments? Mr. Speaker, comment number 2. He unfortunately and ill-advisably claimed that the DNA regulations were not crafted or published. The Jamaican Gazette of Friday, March 31, 2017, published the DNA regulations. And there's a copy on the screen. I do not wish to embarrass him. I'm just laying out the facts, destroying the fake news. With great fanfare, he stated, "No DNA registry." Well, sir, what do you say now? Comment number 3. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable gentleman claimed we have not spent billions as promised. On page 6 of his speech is an extract of the yellow book, which he held up the estimates of expenditure. He did not.
The time allotted to the member for speaking has expired. You may.
Mr. Speaker,
do the next thing.
I ask that the minister's time be extended by 5 minutes. As what? Mr. Speaker, I ask that the member's time be extended for the 5 minutes allowed, plus the 1 minute you told him that will be given to him. So we have 6 minutes.
You have heard the motion. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And
Minister Montague, you have
thank
5
my colleagues as well.
minutes
Mr.
to
Speaker,
finish your presentation.
Thank you, sir. The revised estimates showed at supplementary budget an increase by not 1, not 2, but over $3 billion. Yet he artfully left that out. Mr. Speaker, the money was used to purchase 2 ships and a plane. And the invoices are available and we can give him copies if he so desire. Comment number 4, the dogs. He well knows, Mr. Speaker, that we can only buy dogs from rabies-free countries. We must respect the process and laws of our partners. We cannot go and demand dogs or any other goods. We have to make the request and wait. He never placed an order for dogs. We have the money. We have the need, but we must be respectful of the laws of the country who are our partners. Comment number 5, Mr. Speaker. In his speech on page 7, his speech, at the very first line he left out a part of the sentence, and I quote, "Nor has the new 300-bed facility at Tamarind Farm been commissioned," end of quote. You know why he left that out, Mr. Speaker? I wonder if you can give permission to the member to tell us why we can't commission the new facility at Tamarind Farm. The former Minister of National Security just before me built the new wing. And I say congratulations to him. A beautiful building, well built. We can actually name it after him as it is. It has no sewage facility. This error has cost us an additional $40 million. That money could have bought more cars. Comment number 6. He claimed that the company which won the bid and was awarded by the National Contracts Commission to supply motor cars and pickups, O'Brien International Car Sales, did not import any motor vehicles. In the written speech, it says 2 years. In his verbal presentation, he said 5. Sir, the Trade Board has informed that O'Brien's in 2016 was issued with 27 permits and they used them. In 2015, 16 permits and they used them. 2014, 64 permits and they used them. And in 2013, 206 permits and they used them. In addition, the Ministry of Tourism knows this company very well, as it is qualified to receive duty concessions on motor cars for rental in the tourist industry. And O'Brien's has accessed this facility on more than one occasion. We have letters from the said ministry for May, June, and July of 2015. This company has imported cars, as these C-87 custom declaration forms can show, and these forms are from 2014 and 2015. Coincidentally, the price in the successful bid for the cars is $1.3 million. Comment number 7. He questions, where are the mobile stations? Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of National Security now follows the procurement guidelines. And we follow them to the spirit and to the letter. The mobile stations are now being built out right here in Jamaica. We're not importing them from anywhere, and they will be distributed soon. Comment number 8. The police rule book, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, was published electronically and has been made available to the force members and indeed any member of the public who wish to examine the rule book. It has been available on the Jamaica Constabulary Force website under the resources section since August of 2016. Comment number 9. Mr. Speaker, he criticized me for calling thief, rapists, and murderers dirty criminal. Mr. Speaker, will the member tell me what term should I use? What term better describe a thief and a murderer than dirty criminal? Mr. Speaker, I thought the gentleman would come here and thank this administration for paying the $309 million to the retired police officers who could not get paid during this administration. Mr. Speaker, I thought the Honourable member from Central Manchester would be delighted for the officers who have seen 17 police stations repaired and their working conditions. I thought he would be ecstatic to know that we bought a brand new coaster bus for the Police Federation, a new bus for the hard-working staff at the ministry, 2,500 ballistic helmets, 3,000 ballistic vests, 250 motorbike helmets, 800 beds, $15 million spent on district constable uniforms, 100 combat boots for our ladies, 50 mobile radios, $22 million used to purchase raincoats, 6 generators, fire extinguishers. Mr. Speaker, we must not use national security to push our partisan political agenda. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, remain hopeful that the young man regrets his actions and will do better in his next portfolio. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the delegates of the PNP because they did not vote for that Peter. False and fake news he has on Facebook. I hope he puts the truth on Facebook now. I won't put it. I will give him the opportunity to be a gentleman once in his life. People have the tools to join the fight against crime. The government has invested the resources necessary. We have increased recruitment in the JDF and the JCF, Immigration and the Correctional Service. We have modernized the forensic lab, built out the DNA registry. We intend to target guns, gangs, and lottery scamming. We'll be writing a drone policy. We have purchased 2 ships and a plane for greater border security. We are targeting unattached youths, especially the boys. We will be upgrading police stations. We will continue to increase the mobility of the force. Mr. Speaker, we are taking terrorism seriously. We will continue our investment in the intelligence network. We have introduced facial recognition software in the passport application process. We will repair and upgrade our prisons. We will increase social intervention programs. We will continue to build partnerships locally and internationally. We have a clear path, Mr. Speaker. The good people of Jamaica can be reassured that we take their safety and security seriously. We are investing the resources, utilizing technology, building partnerships. We urge every citizen to be a partner for safety and security. I call on all Jamaicans to become active in community organizations. Let us recapture our neighborhoods. Let us take back the space from criminals. Let us build a society that turns its back on corruption and criminality. Mr. Speaker, we have laid the foundation. And as the song says, we know where we are going. We know. Joy bells are ringing. Jamaicans are singing. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we know where we are going because we are going from poverty to prosperity. If it so pleases you, Mr. Speaker. Well done, Thank you, sir. What's your question now? Bobby. Oh, Peter, you're not come shake me. Bobby.
Busha. Only a good boxer box like you.
Thank you, Minister Montague. Minister Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I begin my presentation in this honourable House by expressing thanks to God Almighty for his faithfulness, grace, and mercy. I thank the Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, and my colleagues on both sides of the House for the support they have shown me during the 2016-2017 financial year, and to you, Mr. Speaker, for your stewardship of this honourable House. I thank the dedicated management team and staff of the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the various ministries, departments, and agencies of government with whom I have collaborated in carrying out my functions. My deepest appreciation to my faithful constituents, my 4 councillors, my team members in North East Centre, as well as my own family and friends. I extend thanks also to the Ministry's long list of external stakeholders, our international development partners, the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank, our bilateral partners, especially the United States and Canada, the private sector, trade unions, and employers. Mr. Speaker, on a somber note, I wish to pause and express my condolence to the family members of Mr. Clayton Solomon, the Chief Liaison Officer who was based in Washington, D.C. Mr. Solomon worked for the past 12 years in the Ministry's Overseas Employment Program. He was also Jamaica's first FIFA referee. It is true that he made an invaluable contribution to the development of football refereeing and sports in general in Jamaica. May his soul rest in peace. Before I proceed any further in my presentation, I table before the House two publications from the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the 2016-2017 Annual Performance Report, which comprehensively details the Ministry's activities for the year, and the Labour Market Survey 2016, which analyzes employment trends. I wish to thank the research staff at the Ministry who prepared these reports. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry's important role in protecting the vulnerable amongst us, while at the same time advancing national economic growth, must be emphasized as the country celebrates 55 years of independence. In examining the portfolio matters, I will outline work being undertaken to afford Jamaicans dignity and respect for the future, and will deliver under the theme, Securing the Future Now for the Next Generation. I begin, Mr. Speaker, with our commitment to support the vulnerable and needy in our society through effective, efficient social protection. It is a commitment that we continue to underscore. The budgetary allocation for the Program of Advancement through Health and Education, PATH, has been increased by 33%. With the additional budgetary allocation effective June 1st, there will be a 30% increase in the benefits paid to the approximately 360,000 registered beneficiaries of PATH. Mr. Speaker, we are imploring parents to send their children to school every day, including Fridays. We need to secure their future and their legacy. Schools continue to record too many instances where children do not attend school regularly. The data shows that for the last school year, only 79% of PATH students at the secondary level achieved the 85% attendance requirement for PATH. Mr. Speaker, we have heard the challenges. No money for lunch, no money for transportation. In response, this ministry in 2016 through 2017, through the Inter-American Development Bank, provided technical support and equipment for the enhancement of the school feeding program in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. This, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that our PATH students are better served by this program. In the area of transportation, $21 million was spent last year as allowances for PATH students. This year, the amount has been increased five-fold, and $115 million has been allocated to assist PATH students at the secondary level for the 2017-2018 academic year. A further $120 million in bursaries and grants will be available for PATH students moving from secondary to post-secondary institutions, and an additional $100 million will be provided to PATH students at the tertiary level. This year marks the 15th anniversary of PATH, and in celebrating this milestone, I'm pleased to announce that for the next academic year, we have earmarked $15 million in scholarship for PATH students to fulfill their career aspirations. Mr. Speaker, this is intellectual capital investment, and we want to implore Jamaican families to secure the future now for the next generation by investing in their children's education. Send the children to school, encourage them to do well, and the government will help to further their educational pursuits. This is our commitment to future generations. Mr. Speaker, We are securing the future now for the next generation in the disability arena. Persons with disabilities are too often excluded from mainstream society. This government firmly believes in the talent, creativity, and spirit of excellence that exists in persons with disabilities. As a nation, as a government, and as a ministry, we must all work together to remove the barriers and stigma towards persons with disabilities. In May, we will begin a public awareness campaign on disability issues and the Disabilities Act to ensure that society as a whole understands the rights of persons with disabilities. We will focus on the development of the first 2 codes of practice relating to the right to education and training and the right to employment. These codes will provide practical steps for the inclusion of persons with disabilities in institutions offering education and training and in various employment spaces. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, we are receiving private sector support in these areas, and I use this occasion to thank the Digicel Foundation, which has come to the forefront with the ministry in assisting to meet the needs of the sector. The foundation will assist us to build the capacity of the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities and in the execution of a mass media campaign. We have begun renovating our ministry offices island-wide to make them more accessible with the necessary ramps, rails, and bathroom spaces. We encourage private sector to do the same. We will be training some of our frontline staff in sign language so that they can communicate with the deaf community. In fact, there are plans afoot to train and certify interpreters for the Jamaican Society through the Gallaudet University program in the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, through the assistance of the IDB, a modern assessment center and multipurpose facility was recently opened for the Early Stimulation Program on Hanover Street in Kingston. The Early Stimulation Program provides interventions for children with disabilities between the ages of 0 to 6 years. In fact, Mr. Speaker, just yesterday, ground was broken to expand the facilities at the Stimulation Plus Early Childhood Development Center in Rockford, Kingston. This expansion, which is at a cost of approximately $70 million, will see the construction of 7 new classrooms, a physiotherapy room, and a specialized play area. The additional facilities will enable the center to increase its enrollment by about 40%. Mr. Speaker, we are taking action for the future through the educational, social, and economic inclusion of persons with disabilities. Since 2016, a total of 500 persons with disabilities have been engaged in skills training and job placement interventions. 211 special needs children have benefited from assistive aids, speech therapy, and physiotherapy services, while their parents and caregivers have also benefited from parenting workshops that provide an avenue for positive interaction and the development of coping skills and techniques. We are indeed securing the future now for the next generation. The country is proud to have a Jamaican centenarian named as the oldest person in the world. I use this occasion in the House to offer congratulations to Mrs. Violet Brown of Dionvale, Trelawney, on this enormous blessing, while at the same time offering condolences on the loss of her son. This achievement underscores the reality of longer life expectancies in Jamaica. Projections are that seniors will comprise approximately 16% of the total population by 2030 and 22% by 2050. It is therefore incumbent on us to be proactive and to ensure that the policy framework that supports the nation's seniors is relevant. The revised national policy for senior citizens will be finalized and tabled as a green paper in the 2017-2018 financial year. Mr. Speaker, our senior citizens are acknowledged as a reservoir of productive capacity and form a substantial resource in economic and social development. We must therefore take action now to preserve them and their legacy for the future. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the treatment of older persons speaks volumes about any society. And at this juncture, I turn focus to our valued group of pensioners. I must express my shock at learning that scammers appear to have turned their attention on our NIS pensioners. These persons are pretending to be employees of the National Insurance Scheme and have been approaching pensioners, allegedly claiming that their pension rates are to be doubled and requesting that pensioners hand over their pension order books. Let me use this occasion to state that the Ministry does not recall pension order books for rate increases. Pensioners who have been approached by these persons are not to hand over their books. They must report these suspicious persons to the police. Mr. Speaker, and let me use this occasion to state that the Ministry does not recall pension order books for rate increases. Pensioners who have been approached by these persons are not to hand over their books. They must report these suspicious persons to the police. Mr. Speaker, we must respect and protect our pensioners, especially in these economically challenging times. For many of them, the NIS is the main source of retirement income. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the NIS pays over 113,000 beneficiaries, both locally and overseas. As evidence of the importance that this government places on the NIS, for the first time in many years, the administration of the NIS has been allocated an increase of $215 million in the budget to allow for the implementation of reform activities. During last year's debate, I indicated that a submission would be made to Cabinet recommending measures to reform the NIS. Mr. Speaker, Cabinet has since approved a phased implementation of measures to chart the course for overall improvement. Phase 1 has already commenced and includes strategies for modernization and improving operations of the scheme. These include amendment of legislation to allow for actuarial reviews every 3 years, revision of all our application forms, and the rollout of a new NIS card beginning June 1st of this year. And I have a copy of the new card, and I also had cards made for all members of Parliament, so you know what it looks like. They will be distributed shortly. We acquired a building in Hanover, Lucy, to which our parish will be moving shortly. We will also be breaking ground for the construction of new offices in St. Anne's Bay by the end of June 2017. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, improvements in information technology will augment the drive for increased efficiency and accountability. In that regard, a new IT system for the NIS will be rolled out in the second quarter. I have witnessed expressions of amazement on the faces of persons when they learn that the NIS provides several benefits apart from retirement pension. Mr. Speaker, less than half of the employed labor force contributes to the NIS, and this is a situation which we must change. We are taking action. An awareness and perception survey will be conducted during this financial year. The information will be used to guide how we promote and market the NIS among our citizens. Phase 2 of the reforms will see another actuarial study being conducted in the 2017-2018 financial year. This will be complemented by yet another reform initiative, that of evaluating the governance structure, investment policies, and asset allocation of the National Insurance Fund. Other critical reforms to safeguard the viability of the scheme involve adjustments to the contribution rates, the insurable wage ceiling, and benefits payable. Mr. Speaker, you will agree that this is a delicate balancing act. Given the current macroeconomic framework and other financial targets that must be met, this Honourable House will appreciate the need for careful contemplation to identify the optimal mix of contribution rates and insurable wage ceiling. An increase in the rate of pension is past due, but the NIS is unable to grant an increase at this time, as we must await recommendations from the actuaries about adjustments to the contribution rate that will afford future increases. Mr. Speaker, the National Insurance Fund continues to perform creditably. At the end of financial year 2016-2017, the fund was valued at approximately $95 billion, reflecting an increase of over 17% or $14 billion during the year. This was one of the fastest growth periods in the history of the NIF. However, Mr. Speaker, there remains an imbalance between the NIS contributions received and benefits paid. In the last financial year, we collected approximately $14 billion in contributions, but paid out over $15 billion in benefits. Mr. Speaker, through our prudent diversification strategy, the NIF's major investments are in tourism, manufacturing, banking, and finance, as well as the real estate sectors. I'm happy to report that the refurbishment of the Bracker property is now complete, and the 232-room hotel located in the beautiful parish of Trelawney is now in full operation. Owing to the success of the program, the National Insurance Fund, through the approved participating financial institutions, will increase the amount on lend to the small business sector from $1.5 billion to $3 billion this year. It is generally agreed, Mr. Speaker, that SMEs have enormous potential for impacting the economy through employment and income generation. So we are seeking to secure the future for the next generation through proactive investment activities. Mr. Speaker, I move away from the comprehensive social protection portfolio to look at labor issues in the context of decent work for all under the 2030 agenda. I'm pleased to inform that Jamaica successfully hosted a Future of Work Forum and the 10th ILO Caribbean Ministers of Labour meeting from February 22 to 24 in Kingston. The meetings were attended by the Director General of the International Labour Organization, Mr. Guy Ryder, representatives of the CARICOM Secretariat, the Caribbean Employers Confederation, and the Caribbean Congress of Labour. Mr. Speaker, this is the first time in 55 years that Jamaica has been a member of the ILO that a Director General was visiting our island. We continue to be grateful for the technical assistance and cooperation being provided through the ILO. This administration, Mr. Speaker, is committed to reducing and ultimately, as much as is possible, eliminate unemployment. It is committed to making provisions for Jamaicans who fall into the category of the informal economy. Such persons, Mr. Speaker, need an opportunity to be empowered and enriched. And this can only come through training and certification. Mr. Speaker, in 2014, the ILO conducted 2 pilot projects in Jamaica on the formalization of the informal economy. These projects were successful, and I'm pleased to announce that the ILO has now assured us that it will assist the government in upscaling the training and certification effort on a national basis. Through formalization, persons will be positioned to contribute to their personal development, and as small entrepreneurs and business persons, they will be given the opportunity to operate their businesses within a regulated framework and in keeping with the decent work agenda. We have accepted the offer from the ILO, and we will be working assiduously in making this national project a success. Mr. Speaker, I would like to, on behalf of the government and people of Jamaica, place on record our sincere appreciation to the International Labour Organization. The ILO has been a beacon of hope to this country through its contribution to our social and economic development. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the relatively calm and stable industrial relations climate which the country enjoys is a direct result of the tripartite approach and the harmonious relationship between workers and employers. This is evident, Mr. Speaker, in the decline in the number of reported man days lost during 2016, which amounted to 106 days compared to 1,620 days lost in 2015. The number of wage negotiations brought to the ministry has declined significantly. Mr. Speaker, you will agree that this harmony and cooperation is conducive to investment as we strive for economic growth and prosperity. And I want to put on record my thanks publicly to the trade unions who have guided, directed, and assisted me as I go about the people's business. I am deeply appreciative. Mr. Speaker, I turn to the pay and conditions of employment branch. The pay and conditions of employment branch of the ministry works to ensure compliance with Jamaica labor laws. During the last financial year, the department received 4,057 formal complaints. The majority of the complaints, 43%, were in relation to breaches under the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act, followed by 39% in relation to the holidays with pay order. In response, we have ramped up our outreach and sensitization programs to educate employers and workers alike about labor laws and any supporting codes and regulations. This year, we are taking steps to amend the Labor Officers Powers Act to further strengthen the capacity of labor officers to carry out inspections to ensure compliance with labor laws. Mr. Speaker, we have gone even further, and we are working with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service to include labor clauses in the standard bidding documents and government contracts. Mr. Speaker, the government of Jamaica must lead by example. We must ensure that all workers, including domestic workers, hotel workers, administrative, security guards, managers, janitorial workers, or construction workers, that they are protected if we are to build a Jamaica that we all truly desire. Mr. Speaker, my colleague mentioned about the security guards, and I would like to say something. The security guard industry has been providing an important service to our economy and by extension to our country. Currently, the industry employs approximately 25,000 security guards. The work-related issues of the security guard industry, Mr. Speaker, has been a topical subject for years. As Minister with responsibility for labor, it is incumbent on me to ensure the stability of the labor market, and any matter affecting workers or employers alike should have the ear and attention of the Minister of Labor. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, I have initiated dialogue with the various stakeholders in the security guard industry with a view to finding an amicable and level playing ground for all stakeholders. Through the resources available, through dialogue, and through consensus, Mr. Speaker, we will seek to address those work-related matters affecting this industry. The discussions are ongoing, and I'm confident that over time and with due diligence, Mr. Speaker, this matter will be settled. I am confident that the result will be a win-win for all the players in the industry, workers, employers, and government. Mr. Speaker, I must report that on September 22, 2016, the Honourable Prime Minister deposited the instrument of ratification of the International Labour Organization Convention concerning decent work for domestic workers, C-189, at the UN headquarters in New York, signaling this administration's commitment to the recognition and contribution of domestic workers to the national economy. The ministry is now working to amend the various pieces of legislation and introduce measures during this legislative year to support compliance with C-189. The convention touches some far-reaching and important employment labor-related issues, such as freedom of association, the right to organize, and collective bargaining, abolition of forced labor, and minimum wage. This is an important group of Jamaican workers, Mr. Speaker, whose future the ministry must secure. Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, the ministry continues to take active steps to protect its programs and systems from human trafficking. 32 social workers and labor officers received training in identifying human trafficking through the International Organization for Migration. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report that the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, STATIN, is in the final stages of completing Jamaica's second national survey on child labor. The findings will assist us in assessing the situation and provide insights on how to address this issue. Jamaica deserves to be child labor free, and we are securing the future now for the next generation. Mr. Speaker, as we look to celebrating Workers' Week 2017, it gives me great pleasure to report that after some 20 years and more, and several ministers of labor, the long-awaited Occupational Safety and Health Bill has been tabled in Parliament. This groundbreaking legislation is expected to provide a comprehensive framework for the protection and promotion of health and safety in the workplace. The bill seeks to ensure that every worker enjoys safe and decent working conditions, irrespective of the nature of their employment relationship. It seeks to prevent injury and illness caused by conditions at the workplace. As we secure wellness and well-being for the next generation, let me remind and encourage all workers and persons conducting a business or undertaking to fulfill their duties as prescribed under the upcoming legislation. I must thank all our international partners, tripartite stakeholders, other social partners, professional associations and bodies, ministries, departments and agencies, past and present members of this Honourable House who served as Ministers of Labour, and members of civil society who contributed to the development of this monumental piece of legislation. Mr. Speaker, with this legislation, we are sending the right signal that Jamaica is a place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. We are securing the future now for the next generation. I want to draw attention, Mr. Speaker, to April 28th, 2 days from now, which will be celebrated as World Safety and Health Day at Work. I encourage all to participate in activities that embrace this year's theme, optimizing the collection and usage of occupational safety and health data. This theme reminds us of the significance of data in benchmarking and continually improving our performance over time to reduce and prevent accidents, injuries, and deaths. As I mentioned accidents, Mr. Speaker, it is timely to report that during the 2016-2017 fiscal year, the OSH Department completed 2,507 inspections covering factories, building operations, engineering, construction, cargo ships, and docks. This was an increase over the previous year, mainly due to the special emphasis that was placed on frequent monitoring of high-risk factories as well as projects within the construction industry. Mr. Speaker, I must emphasize that one fatal accident is one too many. I therefore urge all to do their utmost best in ensuring that they manage hazards and risks effectively to ensure safety and health at work. We must secure our work environment now to guarantee workplace safety, wellness, and well-being for future generations. Mr. Speaker, the work of the Labour Market Reform Commission continued during the last fiscal year in the review of 5 thematic areas, namely education and training, productivity, technology and innovation, labour policies and legislation, social protection, and industrial relations. Mr. Speaker, the Commission is expected to provide its final report to Cabinet by June 30, 2017, and at that time there will be more fulsome discussions on their recommendations. I, however, wish to thank the Chairman, Dr. Marshall Hall, and all the members of the Commission and all those who have participated in the subcommittees for their critical efforts towards this goal of labour market reform, so critical to securing the future for the next generation. Mr. Speaker, I turn to the critical matter of productivity. Improved productivity and competitiveness is the goal of the Jamaica Productivity Centre, and the Be Productive and Prosper campaign continues to inform young people, the private sector and the public sector on the benefits of productivity. The good news, Mr. Speaker, is that according to the Global Competitiveness Report, Jamaica has improved its overall competitiveness ranking, moving up from 86 in 2015 to 75 in 2016. This is a significant achievement, because there has been positive growth in total factor productivity and capital productivity. We are committed to productivity at the heart of the agenda for a prosperous Jamaica. So my fellow parliamentarians, I invite you all to join me in becoming productivity champions. I invite the leaders of all the public sector organizations to become true productivity ambassadors. Mr. Speaker, I wish now to focus on the Ministry's role in facilitating and creating employment opportunities through market intelligence, job placement, and the overseas employment programs. I referred to the National Labour Market Survey tabled earlier, and on behalf of the Ministry, I thank the 660 employers who participated in the exercise. One of the study's interesting findings relate to the fact that 65% of firms expect to hire additional staff as a result of their short to medium-term business outlook. Demand will be greatest for skilled workers in production and services. Our challenge, therefore, is to build on training and certification and employability skills in securing the future now for the next generation. The work of the ministry's on-the-job training programs, as well as the work experience and internship programs offered through the ministry's electronic labor exchange, Steps to Work, social intervention programs, and the Abilities Foundation are steps in the right direction. Mr. Speaker, the ministry continues to be deeply grateful to private and public sector entities that collaborate with us through the provision of jobs that will lift vulnerable young persons from a state of welfare into well-being and prosperity. I turn to the Overseas Employment or Farm Workers Program. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report that more Jamaicans were able to benefit from employment opportunities in Canada and the United States in the last financial year. Approximately 16,320 Jamaicans participated in the 2016 to 2017 program compared to the 14,844 for 2015-2016. Further growth is anticipated in the agricultural and hospitality programs as the U.S. amends its immigration provisions. Mr. Speaker, as we move to secure the future now for the next generation, the strategic move towards diversification of the employment offerings has seen the ministry seeking candidates for jobs in information technology and other technical occupations, such as air-conditioned technicians, electricians, electrical mechanics, and maintenance workers. And even as I speak, Mr. Speaker, the ministry is looking at the movement of Jamaicans to fill the demand for workers within CARICOM. Mr. Speaker, I need to report to the House about efforts of 83 licensed employment agencies island-wide who support the government's job creation thrust. They account for placements of more than 9,000 persons under the Work and Study program, the J1 visa, and the hospitality program in the United States. Mr. Speaker, we applaud their contributions while we stringently monitor their operations to ensure legitimacy. Arising from our strict monitoring, the ministry was able to identify 23 illegal operators during the last fiscal year and reported them to the police. The ministry continues to review the Employment Agencies Regulation Act to take account of the many unscrupulous practices to fleece members of the public. The scope of the legislation will be widened to include measures to address the various methods being used, such as the internet, to attract and lure job seekers into fraudulent schemes. The ministry will be embarking on a public awareness campaign to sensitize the public of the need to be aware of some of the job scams being utilized by unscrupulous persons. The ministry is reminding members of the public to make contact with the employment agency unit when in doubt about a job offer or about the status of an agency. Mr. Speaker, at this juncture, I would like to announce that the ministry will be undertaking a pre-selection exercise for both the Canadian and the U.S. Farm Work Program from June 26th through July 24th this year. This recruitment drive will involve the ministry undertaking pre-selection activities island-wide over a period of 4 weeks. Mr. Speaker, it is important to point out that persons who are interested in participating in this program must have farming experience to boost their chances of success. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I reiterate that the government and the ministry are focused on implementing employment and social policies that will lead to decent jobs and living standards. We are focused on securing strong, inclusive growth and development. We are focused on securing greater social protection to reduce the number of workers in vulnerable employment in the formal economy. We are focused on ensuring that our vulnerable and needy citizens are cared for, protected, and empowered. This integrated approach involves continued social dialogue with our tripartite partners, employers and workers, trade unions, and other social groupings. In this 55th year of independence, we invite Jamaicans to partner with us in securing the future now for the next generation. I have every confidence that with the leadership of this government, we can do this and bring prosperity to Jamaica. Thank you, and God bless you as we strive to build a better Jamaica.
You could have used some of that time, 9 minutes.
Yeah, man. Of course.
Need some water.
We need the water.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the committal of item announcements. Who can come to you now?
Let me thank the Minister. Minister, your time.
As I've asked for the committal of the item announcements.
Those in favor? Members, the leader has asked for the recommittal of announcements. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Announcements.
Also laid on the table of the House today is the Ministry of National Security 5-pillar strategy for crime prevention and citizen security.
Mr. Speaker, the most honourable former leader of the opposition wishes to pay tribute to Mr. Clayton Solomon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Clayton Solomon worked with the government at the Institute of Sport for many years. And we got information, and I was called, that he passed away in the United States. He was an excellent sport officer. He was director. He worked very hard. And the good thing is that Clayton Solomon was not partisan or political in terms of his job. And I'd like to convey to his family members our condolences on the passing of this great Jamaican who gave many years of service to sports in Jamaica and the development of sports. And so I want for us to recognize his contribution. And I hope that we will be able to send a letter to his wife and members of the family expressing condolences on his passing. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Members, as one of the former Minister of Labour, I wish to associate with the comments of the former leader and to express my condolence to the family. We will certainly miss this gentleman, and we hope that the ministry will do the rest and we will associate with at the proper time. Thank you. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we now continue with the presentation in sectoral debate, and the member from Western Westmoreland, an opposition spokesman and tourism, will make his contribution.
Dr. McNeil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start by commending you for the work you're doing and the hard-working staff at the House of Parliament. I also want to thank and congratulate for the work that she had done for so many years, the former leader of the opposition, the Most Honourable Portia Simpson Miller. I also want, Mr. Speaker, to also add my congratulations to the incoming or the new leader of the opposition, the Honourable Peter Phillips, and to just say that it has been my pleasure and honour to have worked very closely with both of them, and I look forward to working with both of them in the days and years to come. So, Speaker, I also want to acknowledge, like all of us here, the support that I get from my family. And again, I want to acknowledge my mother, who is here in the gallery. My wife, Sheila. My son, Jordan, who is also here. And I just say congratulations, because all things being equal, this year he'll graduate from dental school, and I will have no more school fees. I want to also honor my sister Fiona, who is here, as well as the members of the close staff with me, Polly and the others who are working with me. Mr. Speaker, like the member from East Kingston, we both came into the House, both the upper house at the same time, and we came into the lower house at the same time. And this year is my 20th year in this House of Parliament. I want to thank my constituents for reposing their confidence in me. I have members of my executive who have come from Westmoreland. I'd like to thank them for having come, and a number of them have come before, but there are two new persons who this is their first excursion to the House of Parliament in this capacity. There are two new young councillors, Councillor James and Councillor Miles, and I want to welcome them here. Mr. Speaker, today I rise this afternoon to present the opposition's perspectives of an industry that has been one of the sustained economic success stories of post-independent Jamaica. We can all agree that it is an incontrovertible fact that we have developed a world-class tourism product that is the envy of many larger and richer countries across the globe. Jamaica justifiably enjoys a well-deserved reputation of providing an exotic and pulsating travel experience from Negril to Port Antonio. We have a first-rate stock of rooms built on an infrastructure and ecosystem on peerless natural beauty, supported by a well-trained workforce who, for the most part, provide world-class standards of service. To ensure this sector's continued success, we must, however, constantly strive to exercise diligence, plan strategically, and pursue innovation, whichever party may be at the helm of government. I recall during my recent tenure as Minister of Tourism, a journalist asked me what would distinguish my time in office when measured with my predecessors. I responded that while performances in arrivals, numbers of flights, and gross earnings would naturally be of great importance, I would wish to measure my contribution by the extent to which my work would ensure that the benefits of the sector were shared with our people at all levels. In other words, Mr. Speaker, I would be doing my part in creating a Jamaica that works for all of us.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I remain convinced that to be sustainable, tourism must be an industry for the taximan, the jerk chicken vendor, the craftsman, hotel worker, tour guide, the farmer, the raftsmen and women, not just in the resort areas, but across the island. The product is safest, most innovative and sustainable when just about everyone feels that he or she is invested in its success. So, Speaker, towards this end, we introduced several important initiatives. We introduced the Linkages Hub. It has been very successful in impacting respective stakeholders, but it must be broadened and deepened to include more participants as tourism continues to be one of the main engines of the economy. We put in place legislation such as the Timeshare Act and the Community Tourism Act, advanced planning for workers' benefits such as pensions and housing programs. I'll mention these a little later. Important and consequential infrastructural work to strengthen the destination and travel experience of our visitors. Among this work were transformational projects such as the completion of a large segment of the Elegant Corridor in Montague Bay, the major improvements in Ocharias, and the far-reaching work initiated in Falmouth and Negril, including the Sheffield to Negril Road. Another program which was very successful, Mr. Speaker, was the TIPS program, the Tourism Infrastructural Program. And every member of Parliament in here who was in here in the last term would have benefited from that program, a program where we did projects across the length and breadth of the island.
Yes, yes.
So, Speaker, these were done to encourage our visitors to leave the hotels and experience the beauty of our country and directly contribute to the earnings of more Jamaicans. We enhanced our heritage and cultural assets, such as the museum in Seville, the Mobay Civic Centre, Maidstone, and of course, Roxborough in Manchester. We put in place the Beaches program. We made major income tax adjustments with a new omnibus incentive package, Mr. Speaker, which allowed the accommodation sector, especially the smaller properties, to enjoy incentives in perpetuity and make them more competitive. We also formalized the attraction sector so that they could directly access incentives to grow this important subsector. Mr. Speaker, when we left office last year, we left in place more than 2,500 new rooms which were coming upstream between then and this year. In total, in terms of the investment that we had gotten, we were expecting close to 1,500 new rooms over the next 10 years, which represents several billion US dollars worth of investment. Mr. Speaker, this wave of investment is unprecedented in Jamaica in the tourism sector. So the strongest wave of investment we've ever had. Mr. Speaker, I recognize that the current Minister of Tourism likes to take credit for these rooms. As a matter of fact, the other day when he was announcing here in Parliament, the Minister of Tourism was announcing the Charisma project again, and the member from East Portland walked in and said, he said, Wiki, call the police, Ed stealing the rooms. So, Speaker, we are happy because these rooms are going to be good for Jamaica.
Yes.
But what we on this side will insist on is that the Minister of Tourism appreciate and understand that this massive wave of investment was made possible through strategic policy initiatives by the previous administration that positioned Jamaica in the investment marketplace. And equally importantly, the hard work and heavy lifting by the former Minister of Finance, who pursued relentlessly the changes in the economy of Jamaica, which put our economy on the right track. Mr. Speaker, A year later, it appears that the Minister of Tourism is veering a little bit off track. Using the criteria of visitor arrivals and earnings, we're not doing badly. And we will no doubt do well for years to come because of the solid foundation that has been laid. But there are areas of concern, and I want to point out where I believe we are going off track. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, with regards to the pensions for the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, a pension scheme for tourism workers is one of the dearest things to my heart. I did not want the continuation of a system where workers in the sector retire without the benefit of a proper pension.
Yes.
It is important because it gives workers an assurance that their sunset years will be meaningful and their self-esteem and quality of life will be sustainable. This pension must be for everyone in the sector, those in transport, red cap, bus boy, front desk staff, every tourism worker. The Minister pointed out in his presentation that he had started work on the pension, that I did some work, and he has come back to finish it. Mr. Speaker, when I got to the ministry, what I found was a program which spent about $4 million a year to market individual pension schemes to tourism workers, in which they would be the only contributors. Meetings had been held with pension providers as to how these individual schemes should operate. To me, this solution was unacceptable and could not achieve the desired result. I was convinced that to be meaningful, it had to be a contributory scheme where both employees and employers would contribute. However, there were two major hurdles to overcome. Firstly, it would be essential to get the sector to agree to a contributory scheme because we were asking the employers to contribute. I spent a year and a half discussing and negotiating with the sector. And finally, in 2015, we signed a joint agreement for a contributory scheme. The second hurdle was that the Pensions Act does not allow for the cross-sector scheme we envisaged. We therefore set up a committee comprised of public and private sectors with the technical expertise to work along with the Chief Parliamentary Council to draft legislation to allow for the establishment of a scheme specific to the tourism sector. A realistic deadline of January 2017 was set for implementation. Mr. Speaker, my two concerns are this. One, we have already missed the January deadline. The minister says that he's now going to implement it by September of this year. We are in April, and I still don't see the legislation to allow for the establishment of the scheme. It does not come to the House. It has to be passed before the technical work can begin, which suggests to me that we are going to have further delays. And Mr. Speaker, delays are dangerous. Mr. Speaker, there's grave doubt in my mind that the pension scheme will be established by September or even by the end of this year.
And what does that mean for the worker?
Secondly, with the various issues bedeviling the industry, the GHT has indicated that between land tax and the Tourism Enhancement Fund going into the Consolidated Fund, these could derail the agreement to establish the pensions for the workers.
That's not good.
I need the minister to come to the House and indicate if the agreement with the GHTA still stands. He needs to give us a realistic timetable of when he'll be bringing the legislation to Parliament, and he needs to bring us up to date on the work that will be done to establish a framework for the pension scheme.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, all the heavy work had already been done, and I'm asking the minister, please do not drop the catch on this pension scheme. It's too important for the workers of the industry. I now turn, Mr. Speaker, to the second issue that I feel is taking off track. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the troubled matter of the impending death of the Tourism Enhancement Fund. The impending death of the Tourism Enhancement Fund.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the main reason, no.
He can diagnose.
But Montague would have to deal with you.
Montague got on you, Horace.
Mr. Speaker, the main reason the Tourism Enhancement Fund was established was to allow for an adequate and consistent flow of resources to help finance the sustainable development of the industry. The Minister in his presentation lauded the Tourism Enhancement Fund and actually gave every one of the members a copy of the commemorative book. This may have been serendipity or common events casting their shadows. This commemorative book may well turn out to be the funeral program of the Tourism Enhancement Fund. When we were setting up the Tourism Enhancement Fund, Mr. Speaker, we approached the matter as a joint initiative with the industry and using moral suasion, persuaded the partners to agree to the concept which specified that the fund would remain dedicated to the industry. It would remain dedicated to the industry. 50% of it would go towards marketing and the other 50% towards the product. Mr. Speaker, this was critical because the Tourism Master Plan pointed out that the extent to which we can fix the product, get proper infrastructure, improve our heritage and cultural sites, not just in resort areas, but across the length and breadth of the island, would be the extent to which we can get visitors out of the hotels.
Yes, yes.
And remember, Mr. Speaker, over 85% of our visitors stay in all-inclusive hotels.
That's not, we need to break that cycle.
If we can entice them to move around, we will make tourism a truly widespread industry, allowing a wider cross-section of Jamaicans to benefit from it. Mr. Speaker, recent announcements that the fund is now being swallowed up by the consolidated fund is a breach of the agreement that previously had been made with the industry. Hence, the resistance being expressed by the sector. The Minister stated in his presentation that the Minister of Finance has given an agreement to the JHTA, the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, to put in writing his commitment that all the funds would remain dedicated to the tourism industry.
But yes,
I'm anxious to see this done and see this letter made public.
do not swallow hardly. Don't swallow them up.
However, Mr. Speaker, promises of $18,000 with no taxes by the Minister of Finance and promises not to touch the NHT and the TF have now created a trust deficit. In fact, the Minister of Tourism.
He never got it.
Listen.
No, he never got any. He had passed it long time.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, the Minister of Tourism may be the only person in this Parliament who believes that tourism is going to get all the money back. Even the Minister of Finance himself laughs when he says it. He finds it hilarious. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Minister in his presentation to this House said that this is the largest budget tourism has ever got. But there's a 30% reduction in the budget for overseas sales and marketing. Mr. Speaker, never before has there been a reduction of this magnitude, not even in the worst of times. If there's a crisis, if there's a problem, where are we going to get the additional funds from in this event? From the TF? You can't. It's gone. Mr. Speaker, during the last administration, every year we were initiating major projects. 2 years ago, we designated a major project for Negril and another for Kingston. These projects have not yet started. What is going on? I hear they may have been scrapped altogether, as in the case of Kingston, or dramatically downsized in the case of Negril. Apart from the joint venture between the TF and the PAJ project in Falmouth, which was developed and started, and the ongoing Ocho-Rios Partnership project, no major projects were done last year or are underway. So, Mr. Speaker, where are the funds that were allocated gone? Mr. Speaker, the member from East Kingston has asked a number of times questions about the project to fix up the corridor entranceway in Kingston, which was a very ambitious project and we thought a very positive project. Mr. Speaker, we allocated $250 million to the Kingston entranceway to enhance and upgrade the corridor from the Norman Manley International Airport into the city of Kingston. I understand that that project has been scrapped and the funds sent to the NWA, which we had sent, the $250 million, where has that money gone? We understand that the $250 million
No, hardly swallowed the funds.
But we had transferred the $250 million to start the project, and we understand that the $250 has been used, and what is upsetting about it is that the $250 million was probably consumed in the bushing program, and today the bush would have grown back, and we still do not have a corridor into this country. Mr. Speaker, the fund was established by an act of Parliament, so the minister will have to come to Parliament to make the necessary changes to the act. Consensus is required, and the industry, indeed the country, deserves a fulsome explanation as to the modalities going forward, and we need it now. As I said before, Mr. Speaker, there is a trust deficit. No major program has been executed by TPDCO in the last year. No programs towards heritage and culture. No new museums. Both the industry and I are crying foul. And with these huge deficits, Mr. Speaker, the minister still continues to make some very questionable expenditure commitments. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Tourism plans to spend $125 million on a technical conference later this year. $125 million on a technical conference later this year. Mr. Speaker, this is not aimed at consumers, but at industry players who will be coming here to discuss different elements of tourism in different stakeholder groups and meetings. $125 million. Mr. Speaker, this is not a fiscally responsible use of funds. And the minister needs to go back to our colleagues at the UNWTO and renegotiate, especially considering our own tight fiscal situation. Mr. Speaker, those were the two areas that I was talking about where I think we have veered a bit off track. I'm now going to point out an area where I think that a proposal where I think that we can expect to find some common ground. Mr. Speaker, I was particularly happy when the Prime Minister indicated that this administration would continue a focus on housing, and especially housing for tourism workers. Earlier this year, he came down to my constituency to break ground for a project in Mailersfield for an NHT housing project. He has further indicated subsequent to that there will be proceeding with a 1,000 unit in the grill. There's also in Green Island 1,000 houses being built there by private sector. It is important that these projects take place, Mr. Speaker. I think on both sides we understand the importance of housing. However, Mr. Speaker, I need to point out as a Member of Parliament for Western Westmoreland, as I did when the Prime Minister was in the constituency. Mr. Speaker, there is no water in Westmoreland. No. If you go to the grill right now, people are crying out for water. You go to the West End, you go to Orange Hill, you go to Broughton, Delfland, Grange Hill. There's real water. Logwood is under problem. Mr. Speaker, this is not political because it crosses both boundaries, and I think most rural MPs from time to time have this problem. With regard to Westmoreland, Mr. Speaker, with regards to Westmoreland, the last minister had upgraded the Great River water supply, which was supposed to mitigate the problem. However, demands that come with the developments have outpaced supply. Mr. Speaker, if the NHT is to build houses, they cannot build it and turn it over, knowing full well that there's no water. People move into the houses, and we as MP, 2 weeks later, they're on the phone calling their MP and saying there is no water. Mr. Speaker, I would like to suggest a solution to the Prime Minister. I would like to recommend that the Prime Minister mandate the National Housing Trust to work with the National Water Commission and develop a commercial arrangement that would allow the National Housing Trust to make an investment in the critical water projects to solve the major water problems in the different constituencies. Mr. Speaker, I've spoken to some lawyers and persons at the NHT, and within the Act, it allows for that. And there's some precedent of a form, because in the Soapberry, to get the Soapberry done, an investment had to be made. For example, in Westmoreland, the Minister of Water has indicated to me it would cost about $3 billion. $2 billion for Rowan River, $1 billion for Bulstrode. So, Speaker, what we are saying is that the expansion made available because of the investment of the NHT would generate additional revenues which could be used to cover the cost of the investment, and that they could treat it as a commercial arrangement. Yes. This would allow the NWC to expand, and the NHT could then build houses with the knowledge that adequate and potable water is in place. Yeah. It would have the multiplier effect of generating more business to generate more employment. Additionally, if managed well as an investment, it could provide returns for the NHT portfolio. Mr. Speaker, I am urging the Prime Minister and the Minister with responsibility for water to consider this proposal. Ideas of this nature have been floating around, but I think that as a government, we have to look at it formally, because we cannot continue doing this in the way that it has been done for years. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to reiterate a point I made last year, that we have to do more to carve out even more space for more Jamaicans to participate in the industry as owners, managers and supervisors, workers and suppliers. Lest we forget, Mr. Speaker, Jamaica's fame as a tourism industry was derived from the many Jamaican-owned small and medium-sized entities who were the bedrock of our industry for many years. They laid the foundation for the first 50 years. Mr. Speaker, looking ahead, we need to protect aspects of the industry for Jamaicans, as other countries do.
That's true.
Let us examine ways to accomplish this through moral suasion and dialogue with our existing investors and through sound policy initiatives. We must create the framework for investment to make dreams a reality.
Come sit down right yourself.
Minister, the member's time
Mr.
for speaking
Speaker,
has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I ask that the members' time be extended by the 5 minutes allowed.
The motion is that the member's time be extended to 5 minutes to allow him to visit. Those in favour? Those against? As of it. Dr. McNeil, you may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, we're going to have to call for a member for St. Elizabeth to take over again. Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, we have to carve out a space for Jamaica. We have to create the framework for investment to make dreams a reality for the many hard-working Jamaicans in and outside of the industry who want to own a piece of this wonderful industry. Mr. Speaker, we must do the right thing for our hard-working tourism sector workers. We must give them the pension scheme that will allow them to spend the last years in dignity and security. We must provide them with housing that they can afford with modern amenities that must include potable water.
Yes.
Let us use the funds generated through the sector for improvements in infrastructure and special projects that continually improve the product so that we can keep pace with world standards in this highly competitive industry. Mr. Speaker, let us resolve that the development of Jamaica as the finest and most sustainable tourism destination on earth will be the mission of our generation. We have fallen short in too many areas of national life in these past 55 years of independence. Tourism, sport, and culture are beacons. Let us ensure that we do the right thing in the immediate and medium terms so that our children can say, well done, in the next 50 years of our journey as an independent nation. So, Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McNeil. Mr. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the suspension of sectoral debate until next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Next Tuesday.
The motion is that the sectoral debate be suspended until next Tuesday, May the 2nd at 2 p.m. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, it's not intended to do any further business for the day, so I move for the House that the House be adjourned until next Tuesday at the 2nd of May at 2 p.m.
The motion is that the House be now adjourned until next Tuesday, May the 2nd at 2 p.m. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. This Honourable House now adjourned until next Tuesday at 2 p.m.
Current affairs, business, sports, culture and the arts. You're watching PBC Jamaica.
Hi, I'm Doug Hollywood Gore. I'm a professional race car driver here in Jamaica, and I'm here to talk to you about road safety today. Alright, so we're off on the way to Iron Shore to go and look at one of the reasons why this is one of the